Maybe you could talk a bit about all the businesses Microsoft is in. You know, we used to think about it as Windows and then Windows and Office and then Windows and Office and SQL Server and things, but it's much more diverse now. Why don't you just give us the picture?
Yeah, I would characterize what we're trying to do in probably 6 or 7 areas. We're trying to build core software and do core hardware design across the devices that power small, medium, and large screen. Small screen, you can think about a phone. Maybe use a good example of a small screen.
Show us the phone, Steve.
This is my phone, a Microsoft Windows phone.
Coincidentally enough.
Yeah, surprise, surprise, the new Windows Phone 7. I gotta make sure my email's not out from Microsoft. But phone, PC, you can take PC, slate, but middle-sized screen is a good way to think about that. And then large screen, think TV, or in some industrial settings, I think you can think kind of wall board or digital whiteboard, etc. But small, medium, and large screen. And the key areas of importance there are: what are we doing with the user interface? How do you transform the way programs are built for those devices? And how do we think about the user interface and scenarios continuing to evolve across all 3 of those device types? Number 2, we're certainly centered in productivity, and how do we help people use technology to be more productive and to communicate better, particularly from a sort of a professional or student perspective. I see a lot of people with pencils and paper. I see a lot of people with laptops. I see some people with competitive product. I see some people with cameras. I see some people with phones. And yet I don't think we've all hit the sweet spot in terms of, even in a room like this, how we transform the productivity process, or how we transform productivity when it comes time to doing research on the internet. I think there's still a lot of room for innovation. Entertainment, we've made a big investment in entertainment as a set of content and experiences, not to the exclusion of everybody else, but when you think about something like our Halo product, we're trying to plumb the depth of entertainment. Search, big area of investment for us. And then last but not least, what do the platforms and tools look like on the back end that are used to build up data centers and applications and the global cloud, and how do you build and deploy applications to those kinds of environments, and how do they relate to these smart devices? And that's broad. On the other hand, it's not as broad as I would say the average person in the world thinks, but it's also sort of coherent, if you will, relative to itself, and there's plenty of space out there for us. We got competitors, we got partners, we're all scrambling in a very dynamic.
So I'm going to talk a bit about competition and innovation. Both. I had a discussion a couple months ago with Craig Mundy, and he was describing a set of areas where Microsoft had really been first by a mile, and many of these I was familiar with. You know, it really was the first big-time smartphone, right? It was the first tablet. Chuck Thacker and Butler Lamson and all did a tablet PC prototype, gosh, a decade ago. It was the first, let's say, interactive home TV and entertainment. I remember Craig came to Microsoft to work on that project. Rob Short, sitting in the audience here, was working on that. There are a set of other areas, digital music players, right? The first digital music players were Rios. They were Windows things. And those are a set of areas where the company was the innovator, but in truth, somebody else managed to make a really big play. You must think about this all the time. You got an explanation for it? Got a plan for it?
Sure. I mean, there are plenty of areas where we've gone first and have clear success. There are plenty of areas where we've gone first and now have an ongoing opportunity for success. And there's plenty of areas where we didn't go first and had success and didn't go first and are wallowing in that fact. Okay? So you get kind of all categories. And probably the lesson to be learned, or the reminder for anybody sitting in the audience is, in a sense, success in a commercial sense, or success in an adoption sense, actually requires doing a lot of things right. Innovation is important, invention is important, but getting the delivery model, hardware, software, service is also important. Getting the brand proposition right is important. Getting the delivery, doing things at the right time, on the right kind of technology base, hardware, software. And we've got cases that went brilliantly. We've got cases that we're working on. There's no other category in our life.
Question here. Sure.
You spoke earlier about the difference between being in the situation of creating a product that's first on the scene versus catching up and entering in a marketplace. How do you, as an established company, determine the right appropriation of resources between focusing on products that are essentially competing products versus focusing on creating products that are actually aiming to be the first on the scene, so to speak, that aren't directly competing with an existing service or product?
Carefully. Now, everything's a set of judgments. In a sense, the ability to sort of not only see what might happen, but time things correctly and have enough agility and fluidity in the way you're able to assign resources. It is not true that everybody who's good at writing compilers is good at creating the next generation of user interface for Xbox. So I wouldn't say we have 100% fluidity even in our ability to sort of switch things around on a dime. People build expertise, and we have to decide when to go build new expertise, what expertise to build, then get with a given expertise how much you put into listening and responding to the kinds of things that people know they want versus trying to skate ahead, as they say in hockey, to where the puck will be. There's not a science to that. There's not like a formula that says spend X percent or Y percent. And when we do it well, great things have happened for us. And when we don't stitch it, quite together, you can be early or you can be later, but you don't quite get the same outcome. And that's one of the things that's got to be mixed into the system. The advantage startups would have over all of us bigger companies is most of them actually go bankrupt. So in aggregate, nobody worries about any one of them, and each one of them will try something with great fervor. And if it falls apart, it falls apart. Bigger companies don't, by and large, invest like that, whether it's us or the guys we compete with. If you take a look, most things we compete with were either created relatively deliberately, or at least by the time they got to market, they looked deliberate, or they weren't all that successful, or they came from a startup. Facebook came from a startup. The things when we compete with Apple, those are relatively deliberate decisions. They make decisions like us. Google tends to throw a lot more things against the wall, so to speak, and yet the things that are really strong for them weren't done that way. It was the things that, the two startup things, YouTube on the one hand and the search engine. Our enterprise customers, you can't do that at all. Turns out if you want to make an enterprise customer mad, ship them something and pull support for it in 3 years. You have to be a lot more deliberate. So there's no science about that. You just kind of have to wrap your mind around it and think it through.